Well, hello and welcome to the Church Office podcast. My name is Gavin Smith, and it's a joy today to welcome you to our Admin and Ops podcast. We love talking about the work of ministry behind the scenes, and we love to get specialists and guests on the podcast to talk about their areas. And today is no different. We've got Mark Jones from Edward Connor Solicitors. Mark, thank you for coming on the podcast, mate.
Pleasure. It's good to be back here.
Now, our listeners love you because the numbers, I was saying to you earlier, wasn't I? The numbers of people that listened to our last podcast was really high, had some really good feedback on it. So I said to Catherine, my PA, I was like, we've got to get Mark on again and talk about employment law and the changes and learn from him. So, mate, excited to have you on.
Thank you. I'm not sure whether that means whether people love me would depend on whether those 400 come back and listen again. It may just be that actually this is a topic that affects people.
Yeah.
Churches, we want to treat people right, so we want to understand what standards are expected as employers. It's important to be on top of.
Absolutely right. And that is a good point. But mate, I love you. I think you're brilliant. So we'll fire questions. And Mark is always happy to take questions. I'm really grateful for Edward Connor just giving us the hour and the time with him. So love to do that. Well, before we get into our conversation, as always, I want to do a big shout out to Gavin and the team at Church Suite and the guys who kindly sponsor the podcast and make this a free service through their contribution, which is wonderful. If you've not heard of Church Suite, then this is a brilliant piece of software, cloud-based, that will help you really to manage and run your church effectively. A centralized database, you can do your rotas, your small groups, your communications, run events from this. I mean, there's a whole host of things. There's training that sits alongside it. And what we love about these guys is they love the local church. They love the gospel, and they want to partner and make churches effective for the ministry that they're involved in. So a big shout out to them and a big thank you for partnering. So Mark, onto topic then. We've seen some changes come in April, and we're kind of halfway through April now. And then there's some that are kind of being strengthened in sort of October time. Mate, give us a bit of a kind of overview of what has been happening, because everyone is aware probably of the national living wage and the minimum wage increasing, and so people will be affecting their budgets in that side of things. But there's some other things, aren't there, in the background? And give us a bit of a heads up on this.
We're probably facing the biggest raft of changes for many years, and it can actually be a little bit bewildering and also perhaps overwhelming. But I'll do my best to cover perhaps the key headlines, take some of the fear out of it, and help churches feel they're a bit more prepared. So in terms of some of the things that have happened, so there have been fairly minor changes so far, a little bit of tinkering around the edges. So for example, the rules around statutory sick pay, those changed just over a week ago, in that before you used to have 3 waiting days before you could receive your statutory sick pay. So now that's gone, which means if somebody is unwell, unable to work, they can sign their own self-certification and from day one be entitled to statutory sick pay. And another change is that actually people who are on low wages, so who weren't earning enough to pay national insurance at the lowest level, they would actually previously have not received any statutory sick pay. They now get statutory sick pay at a fixed level or 80% of their pay, whichever is lowest. So for some people who are ill, not able to work, for whom every penny counts, or on real low wages, that's something that's potentially really helpful. But because it's a change to a practice that's in place for years, very easy, I would say, for churches and other employers to make mistakes on that.
Yeah.
And as well as you mentioned the living wage, that's gone up by 50p an hour.
Yeah.
And make sure you're on top of that. Very important within churches where you're providing benefits as well, like providing housing accommodation, where you can be on the cusp of what the living wage is, just to make sure that you've reviewed your pay and that everybody is being paid at least the minimum. We've had a new right being introduced in April of bereaved partners' paternity leave. But that's probably not going to be that commonly used. It's an interesting principle that, say, for example, if the mother of your child dies in childbirth, you could then have up to a year's off work on
Wow.
bereaved months paternity leave in order to, where the primary carer for the child is no longer
Yeah.
there. So you can
Yeah.
then step in as primary carer. And uh, but the reason why it's unlikely to be that relevant is because the pay you get for it is less attractive than the pay you would get for um, shared parental leave,
Okay.
and most people would qualify for shared parental leave, so that would be
Yeah.
the way to go. But it's there as a principle, and it's an interesting concept. Again, looking out for, we've got to be, yeah, the importance of family, the importance of children. I think we've got to say that that's a really good thing
Yeah.
to be considering. There are a few other changes going to be coming in. Some of it's tinkering around the edges. So in October, we've got yet another change to the law on harassment.
Yeah.
Things that every six
Yeah.
months ago, there's some little tinkering around there.
Yeah.
Basically, there's employers have a defence to harassment claims at the moment that they took reasonable steps.
Yeah.
That defence is going to be, the bar is going to be raised. You must take all reasonable steps. Now, at the
Yeah.
moment, actually, there are very few cases where the employers managed to establish they've taken reasonable steps. So
Yeah.
it's going to be even more difficult to show all reasonable steps.
Yeah.
So it's not going to probably affect anything in practice,
Yeah.
but it's a reminder that actually we need to be doing what we can to ensure that sexual harassment is something that doesn't crop up in the workplace, and be alert that that's not just amongst between colleagues, but it could be third parties coming to the workplace. So it could be a member of the congregation
Yeah.
um,
Yeah.
being
True.
inappropriate to a church member or staff. We need to be stepping in and protecting staff from that situation. But this is
Yeah.
only sexual harassment that's singled out for this specific additional
Specific thing. Yeah.
protection.
Now that's an interesting thing, isn't it? Because I don't know how many churches will be up to speed on that anyway. So I know there was a drive, wasn't there, for there to be a risk assessment in the workplace of what does that look like in your context. And I don't know if churches have got on board with that yet. I know there's been some training that I've seen, encouraging churches to think that way. I've seen lots of churches step up in terms of their policy,
Mm.
and where you've bought a handbook or something from someone like yourselves or from others, you've been kind of bolstered around that. But any advice, Mark, for churches on that in terms of an application?
Um, Two key bits of advice. Firstly, be aware that it is an issue. Be sensitive about it. There can
Mm.
be perhaps a complacency.
Yeah.
Now, some of that can be for actually all the right reasons. It can be confidence in, that we're doing the Lord's work, and that we're praying through everything. We expect the Lord to bless what we do,
Yeah.
and we're not expecting. Why would we expect amongst loving Christian brothers and sisters anything like sexual harassment to occur?
Yeah.
But that won't be a defence if it does
Yeah.
arise.
Yeah.
So be
Yeah.
sensitive to it. Make sure that staff are aware that it's taken seriously. That if they do have a concern,
Yeah.
there are policies in place, they know who they can speak to, and they are reassured that it's not going to be brushed off as, oh, you're overreacting, or did that really
Yeah.
happen?
Yeah.
You have to show that you take it seriously. The second thing is risk assessment.
Yeah.
So review your practices. If I can do a quick plug, on the Edward Connor website, we do
Yes,
have
please do.
template a template risk assessment for sexual harassment. So they can download that, fill it in, and that at least will help them think through where are the areas so something might occur. So
Mm.
do we
Mm.
have a policy, for example, on staff being alone one-to-one with members of the opposite sex,
Yeah.
or giving lifts
Yeah.
to people, lone working after
Yeah.
hours, about the person who opens up and locks up?
Yeah.
But yeah,
Yeah,
those.
those are the points, aren't they, where there is risk, isn't there? Yeah, potentially. And you were saying about the third party aspect of this as well. So, a delivery driver comes on, makes a crude comment or makes a joke, what he might consider a joke, but it's taken completely, in a different way, that might be considered, hang on, this could be, I would consider this sexual harassment. What can we do? What can churches do around that area as well?
So if you've got a policy, and most will have a basic policy for their
Yeah.
employed staff.
Mm.
But so that actually, do we need to extend that to to others, to visitors? Do we need to have a guidance for those coming to the church, for those who might be visiting? I mean,
Yeah.
you often see that when you go into public places, public buildings, train stations, you'll often see these signs saying about the unacceptability of sexual harassment of our
Yeah.
staff.
Yeah.
I'm a bit wary about the first thing when people walk into a church is to see that. I want
Yeah.
them to
Yeah.
see Christ glorified.
Yeah.
But um, a secular world, they might want, but in terms of we talk about all reasonable steps defence,
Yeah.
that may be something that would be expected to be seen.
Yeah.
But I'm wary about commending that. But I think making people aware
Yeah.
that we do not tolerate it,
Yeah.
and that there will be potential consequences if something happens. Making people aware that they can report something they feel uncomfortable about, because generally, and
Yeah.
obviously things have to generalization, there is a progression.
Yes.
It's
Yeah.
it's unlikely that something will happen that's just come out right, and there'll be an incident of sexual harassment.
Mhm.
Or if there is, there will be a misunderstanding. It can be clarified. No, I don't appreciate that. That needs
Okay.
to stop.
Yeah. 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 Yeah.
It's stopping the escalation. And if somebody realizes, actually, if you're spotting behaviors or something you're uncomfortable with, raise it with
Raise
church
it as soon as
leadership,
you
raise
can.
it with the
Yeah.
object. They expect them to intervene and stop it going. So then the person who might be the instigator of this, there can be a check on behavior.
Mhm. Yeah.
Um, they may well have some, there could be some health issue, mental health issue that could be, they're acting in a
Yeah.
way that's out of character. They may need some support.
Yeah.
You just address these things from a welfare perspective and stop things getting worse.
Yeah. That makes sense. Yeah. That's helpful. Thank you, Mark. Yeah. Great. And so you were covering there, I cut you short on the kind of bereaved parents leave and some of those aspects. And you were talking to me in private about how how the law has changed in terms of, people had a 2-year period before they were, had the full rights, if you like. And that's shifted as well, hasn't it? Fill us in on that a little bit.
Yeah. So there's a distinction made between we can work for churches in various different ways.
Okay.
Perhaps I would explain that. So there are individuals who may be volunteers. So you might help put the chairs out, put them away. You may help with cleaning. You may help with one of the children's groups. You may
Mm.
help with delivering leaflets, doing things in a voluntary capacity. There are people who might be office holders, generally to a minister, senior pastor. There are also employees.
Mm.
Now, employees are the only ones who can be dismissed from a job, and they're the only ones who have protection from unfair dismissal.
Yeah.
So that could be a youth worker, it could be an administrator.
Yeah.
And there are two types of unfair dismissal claim. There's one which is automatically unfair, which could be dismissing somebody because they're pregnant or because they've blown the whistle on some legal activity in the workplace. And for those, you don't need to have any period of service. So you've got protection from day one, or indeed even before you started work.
Yeah.
But for an ordinary unfair dismissal, at the moment, you need 2 years employment.
Yeah.
There were a number of years when, as government changed, it went from 1 year, 2 years, 1 year, 2 years.
Yeah.
It's currently 2 years, but in January, it's coming down to 6 months.
Okay.
So let's give an example of where that could be an issue. A church might want to have to maternity cover, might want to have someone in a fixed term contract for 1 year to cover for maternity. Now, at the moment, that contract comes to an end. The person there's no unfair dismissal claim. You haven't got to worry about an unfair dismissal claim. The fixed term contract ends, and that's it. Then you have going to work for that's fine.
Mm.
From January, if you do not jump through the appropriate hoops, even though it's a fixed term contract and that person entered into that contract and knew it was not going to be renewed, knew it was going to end, if you don't jump through the hoops, there will be an unfair dismissal. And the person will have a slam dunk claim for compensation against the church.
Mm.
So they would only need 6 months, say 6 months service in order to be able to claim. And that means that whereas, if you like, you've got a 2-year probationary period that you, the employee, can decide, is this the right job for me? If not, I mean, when the employee decides it doesn't work out, they hand in their notice, they've not got to justify it.
Yeah,
And
yeah,
similarly, the
it's done.
employer in the first 2 years hasn't got to justify it either. Feel it's just not the right job.
Mm.
But yeah, those within those. uh, Now, normally you have a probationary period, though, when you can say there might be a shorter notice period. We're going to take additional steps to mentor you in the role and to check it all works
Mhm.
well. If you have a 6 month probationary period, again, that's not going to work.
Yeah, yeah,
6 months, it's going to be, they're going to have protection for unfair dismissal, and you won't just be able to turn and say, you've not passed your probation, sorry. You'll have to go through another series of processes in order to fairly dismiss.
mm,
So you would need to be looking at a shorter probationary period, three
yeah,
to 4 months, allowing you time to be able to assess, perhaps a small extension if
yeah,
necessary, if you're not
yeah,
sure, and then make a decision within the 6 month period, and trust that the person will not have something that means it's tricky to assess their performance
yeah,
over that period. No, they don't have a bout of ill health or time off for family reasons, statutory time off. Um, Companies may need to be a bit more brutal. Churches may need to be a bit more brutal about saying, actually, during that first 6 months, you can't take any holiday because we really need you in order to be able to assess you. I'm slightly wary about that, but I can see it why
mm,
it would appeal, because having a holiday can help somebody's performance.
yeah,
It's a
yeah, yeah,
refresher
yeah,
and can help them do a little bit
yeah,
better. But you're up against it, and somebody wanting to go off and travel around Australia for 5 6 weeks is not going to leave you a very long period to properly
yeah. Probably assess
assess. So
that. Yeah,
it might be that you say short periods in order to to refresh yourself, but maybe not 2+ weeks holiday during the first 6 months.
yeah. No, that's helpful. And that's coming in January, basically.
It is, and well, when it comes in January, it means that those who will have 6 months will have protection. So you've not got January and then 6 months to make your mind up.
Yeah.
It's effectively running from July.
Okay. Yeah,
So
yeah, yeah, yeah,
if something starts in July, we'll have 6 months by the beginning of January. We'll have that protection.
yeah. And that's interesting, isn't it? Because September, or getting people employed ready for September, is a big drive in churches, isn't it? That's kind of our busiest program, September to December. And so you do spend, a lot of churches do spend the summer recruiting people. And this is something then to be mindful of, isn't it?
Yes, and particularly those churches who are running a preschool or something like that, once you
Mm,
get started the academic term. Yeah, and to it's not you might have one term as being the probationary period, and then a term's notice or half a term's notice wouldn't be unusual, and
yeah,
that takes you over
yeah.
the 6 month period. Now, this may, I mean, this is going to be what the law says, but of course, our hope is that churches will be, the way people interact will be relational, rather
Yeah,
than
yeah,
necessarily thinking about it all flows from contract and what are my rights, what are your obligations.
yeah, yeah,
No, we want to be operating as as the original church, as the original church did,
yeah,
looking out for each other,
yeah,
looking out for each other's welfare,
yeah.
not yeah, not seeking to put ourselves first. And so it could well be that churches are able to have sensible conversations, or in
Mm,
individual employees who are struggling to have sensible conversations and not have to be fearful about being sued. But churches need to understand that the law is in place,
yeah,
and that if they get it wrong, however relational they think they might be, and however they might believe that Christians should not be bringing lawsuits against other Christians, the tribunals, the courts are set up for that.
yeah,
And it is, if somebody has those legal rights, it's appropriate that they have the ability to enforce it when they are breached.
yeah, yeah. So we've got to wisen up a little bit to that, isn't it? But in terms of, tribunals and those being heard in those situations, that there must be, as this comes into force, there must be a backlog. There must be a sense of how much of this is going to make it to that point. Um, what are your thoughts on that, Mark? Is this
Yeah.
just going to clog everything up to the real genuine cases where there is a rogue employer who needs a good slap on the wrist?
There has been a marked increase already in the number of tribunal claims. So the last quarter, I think that we have figures for, year on year, it's gone up by 20%, and that's
Mm.
before
Wow.
change. That's before these changes have come in a system that is already creaking. So, there are tribunals that are listing hearings for 2029.
Right.
People are years away before they will get a final hearing, and that is only unless there is some massive recruitment, some massive input of money in order to stop the backlog. I am concerned that, let's say that the individual who has been treated badly,
Yeah.
perhaps their wages have been, not been paid properly, and they need that money.
Yeah.
It could be such a long period of time
Yeah.
before they're able to get a remedy that it isn't an effective remedy for them.
Yeah. Yeah.
And whilst these are going on their live processes, people struggle to move on.
Yeah.
Um, so yeah, there is a when the law changes around unfair dismissal in particular,
Mm.
there are
Mm.
going to be a lot more claims. There are going to be a lot more people having employment rights. I think there are going to be a lot more employers tripping up.
Yeah.
There's also going to be removal of the cap on compensation for unfair dismissal. So at the
Okay.
moment, unless a whistleblowing claims, it's capped at a year's pay. That cap
Mm.
will be going. Now,
Mm.
that doesn't matter particularly because only a tiny fraction of people are ever awarded anywhere near the cap.
Okay.
People have a rather optimistic opinion of what a claim is worth. So
Yeah.
they might see, there might be some the cases that get reported are the cases where there are big figures,
Yeah. Yeah.
or they might
Yeah.
use AI, and which is another issue that a lot of people are using AI to bring claims which are badly thought through, um, turgid, very difficult to actually comprehend, and have AI might tell you what claims might be worth in theory, but in practice, somebody
Yeah.
like an employment lawyer knows what a judge tends to award, where
Yeah.
the figures are.
Yeah.
And I'm afraid, it's very common for me to come across somebody, because my practice is I act for organizations, I act for churches, and somebody in dispute with the church will turn around on a very low pay and say, my claim is worth 90, £100,000. I think it's really not.
Yeah.
But their belief in that, which will only be compounded by removal of the cap, means that the ability to find middle ground and settle something is going to get tougher and tougher. So actually, I think there is going to be increased litigation for churches. It's going to be harder to mediate and reach a sensible financial resolution.
Yeah.
Because if somebody is not prepared to go away for less than £90,000 for a claim that's only worth £10,000
Mm.
at best, a church can't justify using its resources to pay them off.
No.
It's
No.
not appropriate.
No.
So it then has to spend the money and time defending it. It isn't very satisfactory, I'm afraid.
And it's not, and it just sort of hangs over you, and these things just become a huge distraction to the gospel ministry, don't they? And like you're talking there of those kind of figures can have a huge impact on a local church that doesn't have the resources, yeah, to tackle something like this. And so it comes back to the your opening comments, isn't it? As churches, we want to be Christ-like, and we want to work relationally well together, don't we? And having clear policies in place with a good handbook and people who are thinking about HR in a church can make a massive difference, can't it?
If somebody is the people who bring claims are people who are uh, unhappy.
Mm.
If I'm working within a church and I'm feeling, even if everything isn't how I wanted it to be, but I'm
Mm.
feeling valued, I'm feeling respected, I'm feeling actually these people are looking out for me, my best interest at heart.
Yeah.
Even when something goes a bit awry, my first instinct is not to pick up the phone, get the lawyer involved, and seek to sue them. So, if we conduct things well relationally,
Yeah.
a lot of things will flow from that. But that is going to require, I suppose, some flexibility. The way that things have been done in the past
Mm.
that might have worked, will need changing, because
Yeah.
people going through training in ministry are being trained slightly differently, actually. So
Mm.
the
Yeah. Yeah.
emphasis is a bit less on relational, a bit more on contractual and understanding my rights.
Mm.
And also we need to understand that perhaps people's expectations are very different. We talk about Generation X,
Yeah.
Y, millennials. There is some truth in that. So
Yeah.
to take as an example, so I'm of a certain age, and I grew up understanding actually hierarchy and respecting that. If my boss told me to
Mhm.
do something,
Yeah.
I would do it. If he told me I'd done something wrong, my instinct would be to reflect and say, actually, yeah, let me try and learn from that.
Yeah.
The internet, the advent of the internet, and actually just so much change of everybody's opinion is the same. And actually, the hierarchy concept goes. So if my boss says something, well, that's what you think, but this is what I think.
Mm.
And why should
Mm.
what you think have any
Yeah.
authority over me? So if we are used to dealing in a hierarchical way, a management way, if I tell somebody to do something and expect them to do it, you're going to
Mm.
have conflict from
Mm.
different generations coming in. So
Mm.
there needs to be adaptable management styles. I mean, we take,
Yeah.
relational isn't saying you do it how I want.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
It's
Yeah.
involving a person, having buy-in for church. We're in ministry together,
Yeah.
understanding that people will think differently from how I think, how you think on
Yeah.
these things, engaging them. Let's see what the Spirit is saying through them. Perhaps we do need to be doing things a bit differently.
Mm.
Um, but we also important to, I think, engage relationally as well, because so many people within the church, people like myself carrying scars. There are times when we've been broken.
Mm.
We don't know what they're bringing,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
there is, there are hurts and things people are bringing, and you don't know if somebody a boss was to speak in a way that was harsh, uncaring to somebody, it may have a much bigger impact on that person than they realize,
Mm.
because they don't know of the sensibilities that
Yeah.
person might be bringing. They don't know the healing work the Lord has done, may still need to be done within that person. And
Yeah.
so anyway, I appreciate it. So I wandered a little bit off topic on that,
No, no, it's helpful though, isn't it?
not so much around the law, but yeah, if the church
About
is
our practice is so important. Yeah. Yeah.
if the church is, it's in everybody's interest, and individuals, employees, or employers, to stay out of tribunals. The only people who benefit from that are lawyers, and
Yeah.
that's not a good enough reason.
Yeah.
My boss may need to say something to me about that in a moment, but yeah, it's not a good enough
Yeah.
reason. I'm one of the perhaps the few. I would love to be out of a job because nobody needs my services.
Yeah.
That's my
Yeah.
my sincere prayer. Um, but if we yeah, if we can, if it ends up in a tribunal, everybody's already lost.
Yeah. Yeah.
Nobody ends up
Yeah.
happy in those
No.
situations.
No.
Yeah,
And you're right, aren't you? And I think the hard thing about working at a church is, isn't it, is that your family come along, and if I break down relationally with my employer here at the church, that affects them, that affects our friends, that then leads to so much hurt, doesn't it, across the board. And
you've got
so
the person who might be feeling that they've been mistreated. They've then got the problem not only coping with that, but whilst they're isolated potentially
yes,
from
yeah,
their church family.
yeah,
But it also has bigger impacts than that, because
mm,
they may be speaking to their church family and saying, this is what's happened, this is how badly I've been treated. The church as an employer is not able to defend itself, because
yeah,
they have to
yeah,
respect
yeah,
confidentiality.
yeah, yeah,
And actually, a narrative is then formed of, you're hearing one side of the story,
mm,
which may be true, but it's still only one aspect of it, and the person may not understand the wider reasons why something happened, which
yeah,
could make it perfectly reasonable.
yeah,
But the church not being able to defend itself, and just schism, and just whole breakdowns. And I am unfortunately seeing more and more breakdowns
yeah,
within churches.
yeah,
I think one reason for that is also because increased insularity. I think when
hmm,
COVID came,
hmm,
people working in isolation,
hmm,
right, we were less good at meeting together in fellowship, face
yeah,
to face. The importance of that,
yeah, 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 yeah,
we lost something, and there's a slight shift in emphasis now, as whether, again, a generalization, but an individual will be thinking, what can I do that's good for my church family, for my colleagues? It's coming a little bit more what works for me.
yeah,
I want to work
yeah,
from home.
yeah,
This arrangement suits me. This is what
yeah,
I want. I need you to accommodate me.
yeah.
Now that can be completely appropriate in some circumstances, but
Yeah,
there's been a little bit of a shift, and that again has had that relational
yeah,
impact. This is
yeah.
just a generalization from what I've seen over the
What you
last
picked up.
years.
No, your perspective is really helpful. Yeah, really helpful. Um, Now, staying on the topic of kind of church and recruitment and stuff, I've seen some stuff flash up on Facebook, and I don't know whether it's fake news or real news about kind of recruitment and on an advert having to say whether you're looking internally so that people's time aren't wasted from externally and I don't know whether any of that is true, Mark, or not. But is there anything come out in April that's saying actually we need to think about this differently in terms of recruitment?
No.
Okay.
Not in terms of how we advertise. Hopefully, we do what we've always been doing. We're transparent. If we're saying you need to be a Christian within the role, we say that. But we're also clear about what we mean when we say a Christian, because the different churches will have different perspectives on. They may have different thoughts on some of the issues that society is challenging churches on now.
Yeah.
So if the church were to say, as a church, we believe in biblical authority. We regard as a exposition of biblical authority, the position on marriage, one man, woman for life, exclusion of all others. It may be important for somebody to understand that who may
Yeah.
be seeking to work for a church but comes from a different perspective, or
Yeah.
their
Yeah.
church thought something differently. So if the general practice is if somebody applies for a job and feels rejected because
Mm.
of what they believe, because they're not a Christian, or they feel in your eyes they're not a Christian, that causes hurt, that causes issues.
Okay.
If somebody understands at the beginning, because they understand exactly who you're looking for and
Mm.
why, so they don't apply in the first place, there isn't the
Yeah.
feeling of rejection.
Yeah. Yeah.
What the more transparent you can be in stopping somebody going down the process before it's closed off,
Yeah.
the better it is.
The
They've
better
not
it is.
wasted their time. They're not feeling rejection. They can go off and go find another job, and actually the one that the Lord is calling them to go and
Yeah.
do. But that's nothing changing around that. I would say that's been what people should have been doing for many years now.
For many years. Yeah. No, that's helpful. And I think I bring it in because partly this idea of kind of the 6 months window that we have, have we got the right person in post? A
Mm.
more rigorous process at recruitment of what we're really that clarity of what we want, and is this person a right fit, not just for the job but for the culture of the church, as well as what they might believe about something as well. And 6 months doesn't give you long, and so recruitment is a key part of that, isn't it, of getting the right person.
It is, but if I'm honest, I think most churches actually would probably, even with having a probationary period, a lot of churches recruit because they just simply cannot cope.
Okay.
You're recruiting at the point that you're overwhelmed, and for somebody to then think, okay, but that relieves me, but I can't give up the time to be monitoring you and supervising you in
Yeah, yeah,
everything
yeah.
you do. So I think to be able to recruit before you're overwhelmed,
Yeah, that's helpful.
every church would love to have the finances to do that, but I think
Mm,
if you're able to do that at a point where you're able to properly give somebody an induction, properly support them, mentor them, get them ready for the role and up
mm,
and running. So recruit early when you've got the capacity to be able to support somebody in that role.
yeah.
It's vital. If you get somebody in thinking you've got a 6 month period, but they are out on their own, trying to. I mean, I remember I took a new job within a law firm um, many years ago now. And I remember just my first week sitting there, with my head in my hands, thinking,
Mm.
"What the IT
Oh
system
no.
I could not get to grips with it, complete fun." And everybody was just so busy to be able to help. Work was coming in left, right, and centre because I brought a lot of work with me, existing
Yeah.
clients I can handle, and I was just there, head in my hands,
Yeah.
thinking, what have I done? Uh,
Yeah.
there needs to be we can't just and we're so dependent on IT now. I was telling you earlier, my
Yeah.
IT system has been interesting over the last
Shocking.
few weeks. Um, Nothing to do with Edward Connor, but just everything else I try and do with IT has been giving up the ghost on me. We're so dependent on IT. Somebody just systems, processes that are second nature to us because we've lived and breathed in the
Yeah,
church. We
yeah,
know how these things do.
yeah.
It's not the same as somebody else. You need to give time, bring them on
Mm.
board. If and that's part of loving them well.
Yeah, yeah.
Giving time. It's loving one another and giving that person time, giving them support.
Mm, mm.
You may feel they're not the right person, but they might delightfully surprise you as the Lord brings out giftings and skills that you failed to spot.
Yeah. No, that's really helpful, and there's some really useful kind of takeaways there for people as they do think about recruitment in the next few months. And I guess one of the things that churches have typically done, Mark, which might affect their practice a little bit here, and to go away and think about is I know some churches that will fundraise, say, for a youth worker, and they'll try and preload it and get enough money there for the whole year or something. Um, but there is an expectation now after that year to continue that employment with that person. And, you know, I'm just wondering, are churches thinking through all those things as they think about funding, as they think about roles? Because the idea of just having someone for a year and then, oh, great, we've got the money for it. Now we don't have to think about it. They might need to step up a little bit here.
Well, listen, it's an interesting challenge because probably like yourself. I wear various hats. One of those hats, a charity I'm on the board of, and we produce sort of free at source biblical materials. It's all about evangelism, prison
Yeah.
ministry, everything else. And we start each year with a budget. We
Yeah.
know we haven't got the money. We just trust the Lord will provide it, and every year He has. Now, do we want as churches to
Yeah.
be operating in a do we want our churches to only be operating saying, well, what's the reserves we've got? And we're going to act within that. Let's wait till it's in place.
Mm-hmm.
Look, the the auditors who are listening will say, yes, that's what you need to do. The evangelists will be saying, no, if
Yeah.
we think the Lord is in this, we head out and do it. That's a dilemma.
Yeah.
But also it means that perhaps when we're recruiting, the person needs to understand that. So if I'm
Yeah.
applying for a job and I think you've only got resources for a year, I'm going to think, are you properly committed to me? Am I going to fully dive in? Because I'm going to think,
Yeah.
in a year I'm out of a job. Why should
Yeah.
I fully commit?
Yeah.
But if I understand that actually you've got finance for a year, but you believe the Lord has brought me to this role, you believe you're committed, you believe He's going to
Mm,
provide funding for
mm.
further years, that you
Yeah.
want me to stay here and want me to this to work and be a blessing. I'm going to buy. I'm going to buy into it. It's
Yeah. Yeah.
not
Yeah.
about the finances. It's about calling. And if I feel called to the role, and that you feel I am called to the role, we're in partnership in this.
Yeah.
I'm going to you go for it. And if it's somebody for whom it's about the money and the security, and that's the thing, then they may not be. I mean, there's a good things because you've got to provide for your family, but
Yeah.
maybe they're not the right person for the role that you're recruiting
You're
for.
thinking for, yeah.
Um, yeah. So
Yeah, no, that's helpful, and I think one of the other things, Mark, that I picked up from churches, and I'd be interested in what your perspective is on this. Is I've seen lots of churches in the last few months start to think about redundancies,
mm.
and that is seeming like more of a reality now, and it's not something I think we're particularly knowledgeable about or have a lot of practice in. And are you seeing that same thing with redundancies coming through?
It started about 2 years. I'm afraid about 2 years ago. I spotted a trend. I was getting.
Okay.
Uh, I don't say I act for I don't just act for churches.
Yeah,
So
yeah, yeah.
I wear various hats, including some very big organisations, and spotted a trend of actually people gearing up for redundancy. So I had an idea there were going to be economic troubles on the horizon.
Yeah,
And we've seen that manifest, that it came to the churches a little bit late, because what happens is, as organizations lay people off, or things are tight around pay, people's ability to, to feel they can give to the church gets a
yeah,
bit squeezed, and that
yeah.
then impacts the
It
church's
does, yeah.
resources. At the same time, but I know there's some question about sort of the quiet revival, but I genuinely believe that evangelical churches that are teaching the Bible faithfully are being blessed and seeing
Yeah.
growth.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
And
Absolutely.
so
Totally agree.
increased demand for for Christ loving staff, but squeezed resources.
Mm,
And so some of it is the church is perhaps looking to shift from taking some employed roles and moving those into volunteer
Yeah.
roles, which
Yeah.
doesn't have the cost.
Yeah.
Although they can often fall into a trap. There might be worth mentioning that, please, churches, if you have volunteers, you cannot give them any remuneration.
Yeah.
You can meet their expenses associated with volunteering. You can pay for training that's relevant to the volunteering they're doing, but you can't give them love gifts, £50 a month, £100 a month,
Yeah.
or
Yeah.
things to sweeten it.
Yeah. Yeah.
The law doesn't allow that. So maybe shifting from employment to tasking to volunteers and spreading the load amongst church, which I think is actually a good biblical model.
Yeah. 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 Every member ministry in that sense. Yeah.
And because the number of staff within pastoral staff within churches who struggle to self-regulate,
Mhm.
who, because they
Mhm.
know the importance of the work they do, and they will work every hour that they
Yeah.
can,
Yeah.
and do themselves some harm from that. We actually, if we can all step up, volunteers take tasks off. That's loving up those who are,
Mm.
are shepherding us within
Yeah.
our churches.
Yeah.
But in redundancies, I'm not seeing a particular pickup. It is happening,
Yeah.
but it's been fairly steady as churches ebb and flow.
Yeah.
I can do another sort of quick plug. We
Yes,
have
please do.
then on the Edward Connor website, if there's a church looking at redundancy, rather than spending money on lawyers, we created a redundancy pack that's aimed at churches and Christian organizations, that
Yeah.
takes them through the processes, gives them scripts for meetings, letters, so they haven't got to spend money on lawyers. That does it all through them in a way that we believe is biblically
Yeah. Yeah.
honoring as well.
Yeah.
So don't be so if you're in a redundancy situation, don't need to be afraid. There are resources out there that can help you do it, cost-effective resources. Um, I would say perhaps a slight word of caution. A lot of churches are blessed by perhaps having a lawyer or somebody with
Yeah.
HR experience, in the congregation. They're not experts on everything. I
Yeah.
often, at the end of a service, there often people sort of come sidle up to me and want help with doing their will, or
Yeah.
just, name excuse. And be careful about over that. We want to help. Be careful about overloading us. Try and get expert advice at an early stage, rather than somebody who might have a broad knowledge about a lot of
Yeah.
things,
Yeah.
could actually make the situation worse. A lot of us in it, Lawyers Christian Fellowship. I'll give a plug for that. The lcf.org.uk, Lawyers Christian Fellowship website, got a find a solicitor section that's
Yeah.
got details of, you can contact individual Christian lawyers, firms that identify as Christian. I'm sure most of those, when if there's an issue, a church says we need help with something, they'll be willing to give you a bit of time without charge
Yeah.
on the phone to give you a steer. It's part of
Yeah.
their ministry.
Yeah.
But don't be afraid to pick up the phone and get some specialist advice from
Yeah.
somebody who actually shares your mission, understands what you want to do, and they're not interested in your money. They're interested in actually partnering with you in
Absolutely.
your ministry.
Absolutely right. There are some great people out there who can help us, isn't it? And you're right. The advice there to get early conversations with people about these things is correct. And I was interacting with a church not so long ago who were trying to kind of navigate this question of, look, we have some reserves in place,
Mm.
but as we look at our budget, we can't afford this particular role anymore. And a kind of trying to navigate that decision of, you know, any business would go, it's a redundancy straight away. And, this kind of faith and stewardship of the two is a conversation that treasurers and church leaders are always having, aren't they, in the midst of this? And yeah, it's a hard place to be, isn't it? Again, with church where we're so relational and we're a church family and we're having to navigate these things. It's not easy, is it?
It's one of the hardest things actually when it comes to pay reviews,
Mm,
because we want to send a message to staff that we love you, and we think you all go above and beyond, and we all want to give you more, a bigger
yeah,
pay increase that we have to as part of that message. But we need to balance that with stewardship,
yeah,
and they can also be the pressure thinking, well, if people are not doing it for financial reasons, so perhaps therefore we don't need to pay a lot.
yeah,
There, it's rare. It's really tricky to do, but I think there are there are ways of showing to somebody that they are valued other than it being the financial.
Mm.
Most people, I think, who go to work to a church aren't driven by finances, but the fact that somebody may not be driven by the financial considerations doesn't mean that we take advantage of them.
Yeah.
They have
Yeah.
got responsibilities. We want to, the fact that somebody is working for Christ doesn't mean that they have to scrape by.
Yeah.
There,
Absolutely right. Yeah.
we want to be a blessing to them.
Yeah.
And why can't they have, the good things as that, the
Yeah.
Lord could
The
bless them
holiday. Yeah.
through us. Yeah.
Yeah. That's right. Yeah. The kind of martyr kind of concept, of, yeah, we have to be poor to work at the church. Yeah. It's true. And yeah, I have chatted with a number of churches as well, who are saying, you know, they're seeking to do a 3% pay rise because they want to bless
Mm.
churches and their staff, but yet they're thinking, golly, we haven't got this in the budget, and we're already looking at a deficit budget. And sometimes just give them permission to say, actually, well, yeah, this is why we collect reserves. This is why we've built these up to enable us to be able to continue to say to staff, no, we're for you and we're with you in this. And everyone is going to be experiencing challenge, particularly as we think about what's going on in the world at the minute, and the challenges that people are facing. Mate, this has been really helpful, Mark. Really, really helpful. And I think, I love your heart to go, right, actually, it's about people working together. If we can work together well, relationally, in a Christ-like way, what a difference that will make to, having to go down some of these roads, having to start thinking about what kind of defense we need to put in place in order to work through some of these challenging situations. So, mate, appreciate your wisdom and your heart in this. Any other things that you think from these changes in April or October that churches might be helpful to know about?
I would say I produce updates on stuff that is happening. Sign up to the Edward Connor mailing list
Yeah.
as a church. There's no cost to it, and you'll get information as these things change, as they're coming to place.
Yeah.
This is tailored for churches and Christian organisations, so
Yeah.
it's not overwhelming. It'll be what you need to know. But part of loving people well, and part of actually we should be obedient to the authorities. The stuff we're being asked to
Yeah.
do with these legal changes, they're not unbiblical.
Yeah.
That actually we can identify some good biblical concepts, such as the family and support, and
Yeah.
underpinning some of them.
Yeah. Absolutely.
I might disagree that they're going to achieve those aims in the best way, but nevertheless, we honour the law, and in doing so, we honour Christ.
Yeah.
But if we do these things well, what a witness to the rest of the world!
Yeah.
Because we want churches to be a place where actually people say, "I am loved well." What a great place to work!
Yeah.
That the headlines change from, and I think there are
Mm.
reasons for this. Headlines
Mhm.
change from churches are places where spiritual abuse happens, where you're exposed, you need
Yeah.
protection. To actually, this is a place for the broken,
Yeah.
where they will be loved, where you can be protected
Yeah.
um, from the world. And what a witness to others. And if the way we treat our staff, and the way we treat those who come into the church,
Yeah.
they will share that with other people, and people will come into the kingdom of God. It has eternal consequences.
Yeah.
And simply, if we get it wrong, if we disregard the law, if we end up in a tribunal, we are throwing away money that people are sacrificially given
Yeah.
on lawyers. There is no good outcome. Our reputation is tarnished. We are seen as being no different from
Yeah.
the world.
Yeah.
And there are people who will say, "Sorry, but this is just not.
Yeah.
This is just not for me."
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely right, mate. I wholeheartedly agree, and love what you stand for, and I'm really grateful for Edward Connor and Gemma and the team. You guys work so hard to support churches, and I love the fact that we get to partner together with you guys and promote you in all the different ways that we can. And Mark's made reference for you guys as listeners to to the sexual harassment risk assessment, to the handbook, to some of the articles that are on your website. There is loads of free resources available on there, but also people can pick up the phone, can't they? And if you're listening to this and thinking, golly, no, we're already way down that road of having to work through quite a challenging situation, then what's the best way of getting in contact with you or Edward Connor?
Go to the website, contact details are on there, phone number and email. I would say perhaps just because I'm don't contact me direct just yet. If we have got again similar numbers listening, 400 phone calls, it's best will in the world. It's
You
not
might be
good.
slightly overwhelmed.
Um,
But again,
but
this stuff is great, Mark. You being willing to do the podcast means that we increase our knowledge, we learn a little bit. I'm able to go away and think, right, actually, is the sexual harassment risk assessment in the right place of where it should be? It's prompted me to go away and think about that. It's prompted me to go away and think about, right, yeah, okay, how are we going to do our recruitment? What do we need to do in terms of our probation? These things will help us. How do we care for people when they need leave in these different situations? And so, helpful, mate. You're a helpful reference.
well, I'm just
We
going to say
promise
also.
not to spam you with
Also,
emails.
contact Edward Connor. There's the contact them generally, and they will filter things
Yeah,
through. They may send you to some, because if it's a non-employment problem, I mean, we deal with charity, property, employment law, data protection. But if it may be something we can't help with, we'll still try and help and put you in the
yeah,
direction of
yeah,
somebody who can
yeah,
help. But can I say, pray for us? Lawyers, we're not the most sympathetic group. We're not the ones that people think about. Oh, they really need our prayer and support.
yeah,
Those who work for Edward Connor, actually, majority of us have left, very secular,
yeah,
well looked after jobs, and we've
yeah,
made a decision to work within a different
yeah,
context
yeah,
that has an impact. But we are dealing with challenging situations where we're
yeah,
not just advising the law, we're trying to seek the Lord's wisdom and
yeah,
to help steer people biblically. It can be exhausting, really challenging work.
yeah,
Pray for us, not just for us. There are lots of Christian lawyers out there,
yeah.
and Christian law firms who are in a similar
Mm,
ministry.
mm,
Um, please pray for us to have wisdom, and one day to have no need for
yeah.
our services.
Yeah. Good man. Yeah, that's great, Mark. Well, we'll certainly pray for you, and mate, thank you for taking the time to share with this stuff. It's really, really helpful. And appreciate Edward Connor and the work that they do. Well, if you've got a question for me, or if we can signpost you to Edward Connor, then we'll add that to the show notes. Please do get in touch with the church office if there's a topic or there's something that you think, right, we really need some help in this area. We would love to hear from you and love to be able to put together, find an expert who can say, yeah, I can speak into that, whether it be health and safety, whether it be a ministry related question, whether it be staffing and HR, all of these things. For lots of church managers, they're spinning lots of plates, wearing lots of hats, needing to know something about everything. So I get your pain, and please do reach out to us at the church office. So thanks for listening to today's podcast, and we will see you again soon. Goodbye.